Is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the T. Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
And I've been told, Barbara said she called Greg Fasula to remind him because he didn't report in, so he called her back. Scary. Back in '04, Greg Fasula, we're not on the radio now?
You are.
I am, but nobody else is?
Yeah, well, Dan
We
is
are.
too. I don't know about this one. Try this one.
How can you tell?
Hello?
Oh, you're there. Okay.
Yeah.
We're all
Testing.
here. Back in '04.
Start over again, Joe.
I had this memorized, Greg Fasula, attorney, said, Joe, do you really want to do a radio show? And I said, well, I'm talking to Dan. We think it's a good idea because we can help people with different information. Why don't you get with us? And he said, let me think about it for a couple of years. I said, no. You can only think about it for a day. Because
Couple weeks, and I don't know about a couple years.
Little pressure.
Anyway, we started doing radio shows, and none of us dreamed in a million years we'd still be doing these things.
14 years later.
It just amazes me every day.
Longer than all your marriages, Joe.
No, I had one that went 17.
Oh, well,
No, wait a minute. No, only 13. You're right.
13.
I mean, I was doing my cumulative 37.
That's right.
I'm used to that number.
With all the wives.
But I had them all up together. But we started doing our radio shows because Greg Fasula, attorney, obviously knew things about wills and trusts and immigration law, et cetera, that we could help our people with. And Dan Woron, independent insurance agent. I can't tell you how many times we've tried to explain to people the difference between a captive insurance agent and an independent, because I grew up with a company called Farmers and it was a captive insurance agent. Dan was Nationwide, both good companies. But what happened is when a customer walks in the door or a prospect and we can't do what they need because our captive company doesn't do it, our captive company will say, okay, fine, you can go to another company and see if you can get those.
But Joe, I still sell Nationwide products.
I know, but now
and I sell Farmers products.
But now they allow you to.
That's right.
See, back then we'd go to this other company that could service these people, and they'd say, we don't like you because you're a captive agent. You're only giving us your leftovers.
But there are still Nationwide agents throughout the country that are captive.
I know, and they can still do the same thing. But still, the other companies, they say, we want to go to Dan Woron because he's independent.
That's true.
And that's just the reality of life. So what happens is, if you're an independent agent, you can have one company. But if you're as old as Dan and you've been in Port St. Lucie as long as Dan and still alive, you have pushing 100 companies under your umbrella.
As long as I'm not pushing 100, we're good, Joe.
But you look like it, Dan.
I feel like it.
Yeah. And Greg, look how old Dan looks compared to you and me.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I like, yeah.
You guys are lucky this is radio.
That's as close to a categorical statement as you're ever going to get out of Greg.
That's about it.
Yeah, Is the sun shine someplace?
That's
Is
right.
it shining now, I think?
Yeah, somewhere maybe.
Somewhere maybe. And then Joe Martek, financial advisor, same thing. There's like only 30,000 different investments out there. Nobody knows all of them, but there's certain areas of expertise that I lean on heavily. One, variable annuities. Variable annuities basically say, okay, fine, we allow you to be in the market. But on the other hand, we throw insurance on it just in case the market doesn't work. We have some protection to protect your family in case you die on a wrong day and to protect you with guaranteed income for life if you have the right product. My compliance people say I'm supposed to say, I don't know the claims paying ability of the insurance company, but that particular product, and by the way, just as I do this almost every day, the NASDAQ 100 as of this morning was up, not including today, almost 10% for the year. Still.
And that's what you were sort of predicting from early on.
I still did, but I didn't predict the NASDAQ 100. I predicted the S&P 500, which is up just under 1 as of this moment.
They said last week it was actually down
For the year.
For the year.
But as of this
Briefly,
morning, it was
briefly.
up 0.75%. I follow it like every day, but yes,
It's been a roller coaster
Oh,
lately.
well,
So how much was it up last year?
well, only 20%.
So if it was
19 points.
So if you divided it by 2 years,
That's
it's
10%
average
a
of
year.
10% a year. So
Well, the S&P 500 is basically averaged pretty close to 10% a year for the last 30 or 40 years. So when we look at good years and bad years, they come and go.
do you think there's a misconception by younger people who haven't been through really big downturns that everybody should get 10% a year every year forever?
Well, everybody should. We all agree with that. But
we don't.
But there's no reality
But
there.
we don't.
No, the key is this. You can go to the bank, which is where your safest money is. I don't care what anybody says, and you can get 1%, 0.5%, maybe 2%, even maybe 3%.
If you tie it up long enough for a CD, you can.
Yeah. So the key thing is this: is if and I met with a prospect a couple weeks ago, a fellow that I've known for probably 10 years, and he's got a ton of money, and it's all in CDs, but he's got a ton of money, and he's an old guy. And I said, there's no reason for you to invest anything in anything because you're not spending the money. You're not even spending the interest. You're going to leave this money to your kids. So it doesn't make any sense at all to start moving money into some risk when you're 80-some years old. On the other hand, when you're 60, 50, 70, when you start...
you're building for retirement.
Well, the other side of the coin is, what if you don't die? One of the problems is you outlive your money.
Yeah.
So
I have children, Joe. I'll become their burden.
well, with any luck, I already told my daughter, I said, make sure you get a house big enough so
That's
you got
right.
room for me.
I'm having those negotiations with my children right now.
You know, I have a buddy of mine, his father just died at age 94. And I mean, it was just a couple days ago. And Dad, 2 sons. The one son has lived with Dad for like the last 5 years. Then there was people out there bad-mouthing this man because he's living off of Dad. And I just tell them, I said, look, if that kid was not there, Dad would be in a nursing home.
And probably bankrupt with all the fees and stuff that they charge.
Yeah. And if he's his caregiver, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of
Oh,
work.
yes,
So then, in this last year, Dad really started to deteriorate. So both brothers moved in with Dad, and basically, that was their life. And and I just admire the devil out of somebody that gives up their life for this elderly parent. I mean, Dad was going to leave them their money anyway. It didn't make any difference. But the bottom line was they cared enough about Dad to not put him in a nursing home.
I say that's as it should be.
Well,
It's how it used to be.
well,
Yeah.
But it isn't.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
but it isn't.
always. I mean, it's,
No, like
And it's not easy, but it's family and it just, to me, it feels that's the way that it should be. But there is business out there offering to take care of your
But
elderly.
it's so
Yeah.
expensive.
Family members.
I know, like with
$6,
my
$7
dad,
grand a month for a nursing
with
home
my
now.
dad, we built a guest house for him because I was his only son, and we, Nancy and I took care of him till he passed. But then we took care of her mom and dad.
Yeah.
But for her dad, Gil, he got Alzheimer's, and he started eloping and running off, and we knew he wasn't safe at our house, so we put him in a facility.
Yeah, but you did everything that you
Up till then.
within your
Up till then.
ability.
Up till
Sure.
then.
I
And then it was like Joe said, it slowly climbed up to almost $6,000 a month, which we could pay.
Yeah.
But how many people can do that?
No. Well, if you
Well, if you think about how would you live on that kind of money?
Well,
I mean-
first of all, this was in a little 15 by 15 room. It shouldn't cost $6,000 a month to take care of one little man.
however, it does.
Well,
And-
they say it does.
Yeah.
Well, that's the going rate, and it might be closer to 7,000.
Well,
today.
when we started, it was reasonable.
Yeah.
And then within let's say a month, they go, well, Mr. Gill needs help combing his hair. That's
Yeah.
an extra $300, and he needs help doing, and he can't cut his.
You
food
just
right.
arrive with
And
arrive with the
everything-
clippers, give him a marine buzz cut. Heck with
Well, but you
combing
see,
his hair.
Big business.
He's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not telling the whole story. The reality is this: there's these what they call them ADLs, the activities of daily living. If you can't go to the bathroom by yourself, if you can't bathe yourself, if you can't feed yourself,
So you fall into a category that costs more money.
yeah, boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have nursing home abuse because they don't take the person out of the bed fast enough to get them to the bathroom.
Even though you're paying.
Even though you're paying.
Well, they're
So-
busy. They're busy braiding each other's
Well-
hair at the nurse's station, and they're busy talking about their online dating, and
All it amounts
and
to
they're
is
busy,
if-
you know.
And I've heard people say, "Well, I don't want to be a burden to my kids," and I says, "Well, guess what? I'm going to be a burden to mine if I,
I think-
don't."
yeah, I like that plan.
Guaranteed.
The
No
nicest
doubt
thing
about
I
it.
saw,
Well, like Dan says, up to a point.
I saw
Well,
an
if
article
you're
over
out
in,
to
in-
lunch,
in
if you're
Europe.
out to lunch
Yeah.
and you don't know what's going
Yeah.
on, who cares?
Well, what they did, they built like a little village for instead of a big box where you all got warehoused.
Right.
And you could go to the little coffee shop, or you could go to the baker, or for lunch, and it looked like a little town, but it was really for elderly housing.
Well, yeah, that's called. That used to be the one on East Ocean, which you had to be able to walk in and walk out. But they had restaurant, bar, pool, movies. I mean, it was.
Oh, really?
When I had my old lady that I took care of, when I showed her that, she died and went to heaven because she thought she was moving into a hotel with all these maids
resort.
and resorts, because it was. So you can pay extra for services, but you had to be ambulatory, meaning they
You had
didn't
to get-
lock you in.
right.
They had
you
a
had
nurse-
to be able to walk to the bar.
Right.
Well, you
and
had
walk
to-
back.
and the key is this: you couldn't be fried in your brain because you had to find your way back. When they evicted her,
Right.
was because she forgot where she lived one day.
Well, you have to put something on the door. We used to put a thing for Gil because he was a Marine, like a Marine insignia, because all the doors looked the same. And the
yeah.
thing was built like a big square, so you could never get lost. You just kept walking around forever.
Eventually, you'll find
and
your way out.
eventually you hope you find the right
Or someone
room.
sees you going around another lap.
Dan, that's how I was raised. GI housing on a street in Detroit. Every house was exactly the same. When the old man came home drunk, we never sure what door he went.
That's right. You can make those mistakes.
And, hey, I guarantee it happened in that neighborhood. 340-1590, 340-1590. Hey, Mike, you can give us a call. Bulldog, this is our Christmas almost season.
We haven't heard from Bulldog in a while.
Well, I heard from Mike last week, and I'm not positive that Bulldog did. I don't remember. Did Bulldog call us last week?
I don't think
I'm
so.
not. I don't think. I think he might have skipped us last week.
Well, with Christmas holidays, there's a lot of things going on, and
you never know.
there's traveling, and
Yep,
so
yep.
it all works out.
340-1590, 340-1590. I'd say that's toll free from any place, but it's not. It's just a local number. You can call us, and glad to get you
But
on
most
the radio.
people have cell phones, so it really is no long
It
distance.
doesn't matter
Isn't that
anymore.
the truth anymore?
Yeah.
You just put 772-398-50.
Yeah, yeah. And anyway, so back into the nursing home kind of concept. One of my ex-wives' family was from a little town in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan called
A
Champion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an Ooper.
Yep, Uper.
Anyway, it was 750 people, and the town was divided into 3 towns: Finntown, Swedetown, what was the other one? Anyway, Frenchtown. Anyway, and everybody worked in the mine underneath the town. But everybody in that town built a probably 15,000 square foot facility for the old people. And they all took care of them. There was no government money. There was no nothing. Everybody.
Well, there's
took
some
care of
really
them.
old world type customs that they
That was
still
what that
today that they still live by. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure
Yeah.
that building is
Amish
still
people,
there. I wonder if it's still being used. But bottom line, yeah. Well, you hit it, Greg. There's certain ethnic groups that just say, "Hey, that's what's going to be, no matter what. You're moving in. You're not going into that facility, whatever it might
But
be."
young
Right.
people, and I will say this without any, hesitation. I know that my youngest children, Megan and Brett, got a tremendous amount of knowledge and understanding of old people by having my father and my in-laws live with us when they were little. They got a lot out of that.
When I grew up as a kid, my best buddy, Doug Berman, Jewish, and his grandmother, lived in the house, and she was the stereotypical old lady, all dressed in black every day. I mean, head to toe black, and look almost like a nun if she hadn't have been an old Jewish lady. Anyway, I remember she'd get mad at us kids all the time because we'd be ripping through the house and causing trouble, as little kids would do. And she used to speak in broken English, Yiddish, and one of my favorite sayings that I'll never forget, when she'd wave her finger at us and yell at us, and then she'd say, Old people should not be allowed to be born.
Oh.
That's a good one.
340-1590, 340-1590, and faithful listener and caller Mike. It's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Good morning.
Normally
Good
I
morning.
call with some kind of an agenda to talk about, but today it's just pure free flow, no planning. I just want to thank you all for another year of tremendous illumination, entertainment, and really radio adventures like nowhere else. Thank you all so much for it.
Hey, man, I'm going to tell you what. Can you get us a plaque with those words
That's
on
right.
it?
I like that.
we like that one. That was good.
The Joe Martek Show, the radio adventure.
The radio.
You know what, though, Mike? There was something that happened this week that was very entertaining. And if you watched Nancy Pelosi with our president, it was very entertaining.
The discussion
Surprising,
on the
really. I
wall.
was surprised he would let something like that go and be televised.
Well,
It
you
was
know,
pretty ugly.
Do you not think he didn't do that? He knew that was going to happen. He did that on
Yes,
purpose.
he
Didn't
did.
she
just to
ask for
show-
the cameras to
They
leave?
did it on purpose also.
Yeah, she
Well,
asked
Yeah, but the
for
thing is,
cameras to
she
leave.
Both
she
sides
she said we shouldn't we be doing this behind closed doors.
He said.
And then
Schumer said that.
Okay, but then she came out after and said things that she lied.
Yeah, but that's okay.
People were watching though.
No, but first of all, I'm used to women lying to me, so it doesn't surprise me. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, didn't it occur to her? I mean, just a few minutes ago, those cameras were rolling.
Anyway, as I said, that was our humor this week. I think from whatever side of it you wanted to look at it, it just made my
That didn't everyone in that room look uncomfortable?
Well,
yeah.
Except for Pence.
and
Was-
he never said a word.
Was
he just
he was
sat
there?
back there.
He was there to keep it civil.
Yeah,
That's
and
right,
he
that's
didn't
right.
say one word or move a muscle.
No.
You know.
I'm excited about the bowl season. I'm as simple as that. It's the
I'm
best
ready.
time of the year for me. The great college bowls are
Yeah,
about
boy.
to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be very,
Alabama.
Games
very
are gonna meet
curious.
up with
Alabama,
mighty
Crimson Tide.
I was
Wisconsin
just,
again.
you know, Greg graduated from Alabama, you know, so.
Yeah,
And he doesn't even look like a redneck, but, you know.
And Oklahoma beat Alabama. That's the question. That's who's going to play.
I don't think so. I don't think they.
You're not a little prejudiced, Greg.
Well, their defense. I think
strong
anybody
team.
can pretty much score on them. I don't see how they stop Alabama from scoring.
Georgia really looked strong in that first half against Alabama, but then Alabama had enough and took it to them.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
what happens. Well-
They've been starting slow the last few games. So
How about
I
that
don't know
UCF
why.
team? All right, now everybody says, hey, they don't play a tough schedule, but they play the schedule they're given.
Yeah, right.
All right, and they've done it for 2 years. So I think if they take it to LSU, which I suspect they will, be honest with you, I think he'll put an end to that. But if LSU runs over them,
Yeah, that'd be, yeah.
then it's going to be, we told you so.
Well,
Yeah, I don't think they'll beat LSU.
Yeah, that's going to be a great game, too. There's a bunch of good matchups.
Hey, Mike, listen, I hope you have a magnificent Christmas. We'll be on another week, but I think the Christmas day after Christmas, I think we're not going to be here.
If you're here, Joe, you'll be here alone.
About alone, right?
More than likely.
I don't think I might show up and have to run the whole Camilla.
You may have to sit here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, thanks so much, you all, and have a good day.
You
now.
too,
Mike,
Mike.
thanks
You
for
too,
calling in.
Bye.
340-1590, 340-1590, and we have another caller. We've got Nancy. It's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hi, Joe. Merry Christmas.
Thank you,
And
thank you.
greetings. I wanted you to know that I'm an Uper from the Upper Peninsula listening to you way down here in Florida.
Not a Uber, but a Uber.
Uber.
No, it's Upers. It's a Uper. Where in the Uper were you from?
Well, I was from the Sioux, and my brother still has a bar and restaurant in Brimley, and he's a working fool. But goes through like 600 pounds of whitefish in a week.
You know, the only job in the Uper is having a bar and a restaurant. You know that.
That would be good. Although I'm so old, instead of a nursing home, I'm so old I could ski free if I could get back up there.
Isn't that the truth? Now listen, this is really upsetting me now that you say that, because I'm going to Montana on the 10th of January, skiing for 8 days.
Wow.
It's free.
Well, I've been out to Big Sky, and you'll
Big-
have
yeah,
a
Big
wonderful
Sky country.
time.
I'm going to Big Mountain, which is in Whitefish, and it's free.
Don't we love free?
Don't-
Free's
yeah.
my favorite four-letter word, begins with F.
Well, the only problem is, you're right. The only thing wrong with it, It's not free to get there, and it's not free to stay there, and it's not free to eat there or drink there. But the lift tickets, which are roughly $500, because I'm in the quote over the hill gang.
Right, isn't it fun?
Right.
And if you get a little brass plaque and put it on, it doesn't do.
They really get you when you have to call a paramedic.
That's
though.
right.
Hey, listen.
That's why it's free.
That's why it's free. Well, they know I'm not going to use much snow up.
Well, if worst comes to worst, just slide down on your rear end.
That's right.
Which on occasion that has happened.
Yeah, my son-in-law took me down over to a Black Diamond, and I thought, there is no way I'm getting down that hill.
Did you get rid of him, that son-in-law?
Actually, as a matter of fact, they are divorced. But we still love them. We love all the in-laws and outlaws.
There you go.
So,
Well,
but wish you all a Merry Christmas, and we
Thanks.
love your program.
Thanks.
And haven't seen you in a long time, so hope we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks. Bye, Nancy.
Bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. Yeah, that's a, what happens is the last time I was out there, I was in the Over the Hill gang, and she said, you got to buy lift tickets, and I showed her my driver's license. And she goes, oh, you don't have to.
Senior discount, huh?
Hey, not a discount, no charge.
No,
Yeah.
no charge.
You know, so
Isn't that true with all state parks, too, when you get to be your age? Joe?
national parks.
National
parks.
They figure if you're that age and you're still willing to do it, you might as well get some sort
But
of.
national parks, I
Right.
think it's just 60, and you get a pass. You pay for it one time, and you get into any national park in the whole country for free.
You know, in some areas, if you get to be your age, Joe, you don't have to pay school taxes anymore.
Listen,
Wouldn't that be great?
the key thing that happens at my age, the fact that I can still pay the taxes, that I'm not living with my daughter, is impressive.
That's right.
340-1590, 340-1590. The reason I was leaning on independent insurance agent, because when somebody walks in your door, and unless it's an area that you don't care, like jet airplanes or super yachts, you have a company out of that whole great big book of business that can handle them. And then if that company falls out of favor the next year, you've got 10 or 20 companies backing up normally that same line.
Well, we're starting to see some upward pressure on auto and homeowners.
I heard.
I would say 30% of our time is taken up by reshopping for existing customers.
Well, and that's a good thing.
But I'm saying that, Joe, for the listening audience to understand that there is upward pressure. You know, if you get a huge rate increase, don't think that that's the only game in town. There may be some options for you, but over time, every carrier is going to follow suit, and you're going to slowly
you
see
and I
everything
both know,
going
history-wise, we used to call it buying business, and I'm sure you still do. Companies come in and they get admitted to do business in Florida, and they'll come in and lowball for a period of time.
Well, it's a different phenomenon right now. What we're seeing is pressure from the reinsurance market because of all the catastrophes we've had over the last 24 months between here and other parts of the world.
Right.
Okay, you've had tremendous disasters, and look what just happened in California.
Big
So
time.
these big reinsurance companies, they reinsure many, many, many carriers, and when they eat these tremendous losses,
Right.
they pass it to the company who's buying the reinsurance from them, and guess what they do? They
Pass
pass
it
it
to the
right on to
consumer.
you.
You know, there's no such thing. Whenever you get a tax increase to companies, there's never no such thing. A tax increase to companies means the consumer is going to pay more money for the product. Real simple. A company is going to operate on a profit, otherwise they go out of business.
Well, what you're going to see some carriers resistant to passing the entire cost off right away. Other companies will drop it right on you and say, here's the full amount.
Yep.
So what our goal is to try to find the companies that haven't passed on the full cost. They may, over, say, a 3 or 4 year period of time, slowly bring you up where they need to have you. But in the meantime, we can maybe move you 3 or 4 times. So, you know, there are some options, but the bottom line is everything is starting to trend up.
There you go.
I've got a question about car insurance. At what point is having full coverage on your vehicle really not? It doesn't pay off.
When it's only worth $100.
Well,
I mean,
that's a hard
how many
question
years?
to ask. So here's what I would tell you. If your car got totaled out, could you afford to put a down payment down on a new car? Or if not, is it going to put you in a bad position? That's the question for me. You know, I deal with a lot of people on a very tight fixed income. So sometimes it's cheaper for them to take a bigger deductible and know if they total it out, there's going to be enough money to at least put a down payment on a car, then have to pay the whole thing themselves. For other people that are more affluent, I would say it may not be the best, bet. Maybe take just the comprehensive, because there's zero deductible on the windshield. So if you're paying, $70 or $80 for that coverage, and a little thing flies up and cracks your windshield, windshields are quite expensive. And with some of the newer windshields that have defrosters and all kinds of things built into them, it could be, over $1,000 easy. So, you try to make an educated decision, and you try to not put your client in a bad economic way. So
I thought windshields were like standard coverage.
No.
That's only if you have comprehensive.
Yeah, and that's only the windshield in Florida has a zero deductible. What it is, they don't want you to have a chip or a crack and not fix it because you go, I don't want to pay that. All of a sudden, now that thing ends up in your lap because you're going down the interstate at a high speed, and all of a sudden, that's when it decides to crack all the way down. So they can put these little resins in them.
Yeah, which I have had done.
But what I always tell my clients is, if it's in the field of vision where you're driving, I don't like that thing being there. My eye will always go to it if I know it's there.
Well, the last time I had it done, Dan, they did such a good job, you couldn't see it. When it was done.
And if you do it fast, if you get a little chip and you do it right away,
that's what you're saying.
because it will crack.
Yeah. They say
it'll
if you
just
go
get
to
a little crack, and then the little crack gets bigger.
Those drive-through car washes, and that oils and the waxes get inside that chip. Now it's hard for them to put a clear resin.
Okay, because it won't stick.
Let me ask you a question because of my cheap side. So
which side is that, Jim?
I know, the whole right side. Anyway, so I've got this 07 Ford F-150 that you insure, and it's fully insured. But a couple of years ago I didn't because I hardly use it. I take it down to the Keys. It's about the only time I drive.
You pull your boat down.
I pull it down. So what I'm thinking about is like a week before I go to the Keys, I want to get it insured. And then when I get back, I want to cancel the insurance.
You're going to keep a tag on it?
I was just going to say that affects your
Can't do
tag, and then you can't park it with no tag.
You see? I'm trying to be cheap, but Dan's not helping me.
But here's what you could do.
Back it in.
We might be able to write you a separate policy with lower limits.
Well, I know that, but I'm not worried about the lower limits. I'm doing the same thing you said because the thing is probably worth $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 because it's only got 65,000 miles on it. So the
but if you get into a small, that's what I was wondering. If you get into a smaller, fender bender where you need to have body work done, but the car is still good, what will the insurance company do?
Yeah, well, it all
depends on your deductible.
Okay.
Well, no. They might total it out.
It might total it because why fix it?
All right. So let's suppose they say, hey, we're going to total it out. We're only going to give you a tiny bit of money. And you go, old Betsy's worth a whole lot more than that.
Right.
That's when you call your agent and say, hey, what can you do to help me drive up the true value of my car? Well, I would say your car is probably insured on an actual cash value basis, which means if I have two trucks like Joe's side by side, is Joe's truck in great shape and the other truck ragged out? Does Joe's truck have low mileage? Does the other truck have hundreds of thousands of miles? They have a different value. So you try to drive the value up, all right? Plus, you want to make sure you get paid the taxes if you had to buy that vehicle. You want the value, the tax. There's lots of things that you want to have added to your payment.
So you can go back to the insurance company is what you're saying and say, hey, listen, the real value of this is not X, it's really Y, because it's in good shape
you have
and
to
low
prove
mileage.
It would be like going to Edmunds or Kelley Blue Book.
Right.
Well, first of all, you can't buy a car wholesale.
Right.
So if they want to give you a wholesale value on it, you go, I can't buy a car wholesale, I can only buy it retail. So you go to the retail side of Edmunds or Kelley's or whatever system you want to go to and help establish your fact that you think your car is worth more, and here's the reason why.
Well, doesn't whoever company you've got me with, and I can never remember because I don't pay attention to it because I'm not worried about it, but they send me a thing, I think once a year or so. How many miles are on this thing now?
Yeah.
Because I probably tell them I drive 5,000 miles
a
year.
We're giving you a low mileage discount
exactly.
with that carrier.
So
and not every carrier offers that anymore.
Yeah. Well, they want to make sure that I'm not driving 50,000 miles a year and I'm claiming I'm only driving 5,000.
That's right.
So, but that truck, I figured it out. It's an 07, and I got 65,000 miles, so it's like 6,000 miles a year. 6,000 miles a year is all I put on.
Well, if you keep it long enough, Joe, it can become an antique and a collectible.
As soon as I get, 25 years as an antique.
But don't you need more insurance then?
No, you can get a stated value for a lot less.
Okay.
Like I have that little Mustang convertible I have now. It's a 1998, so it's 20 years old, and I have $500,000 in liability, and I have it. It's all stacked up, but I pay like $800 a year.
Yeah.
So
Well, now you know the boat has to be 30 years old to be an antique.
yeah, but I don't know if I want a boat quite that old. Do you use that boat still?
You kidding? That boat gets used more than me.
The goats.
340-1590. 340. In fact, I went down to Little Rabbit, my little island down in the
Did you go down
Keys.
there again?
Yeah, 2 weekends ago. What I did, it's got to be cool nights, and no rain, because hey, we're camping on an island that's 10 miles from no place. Now the
Yeah,
magic.
it's not any fun in the rain.
Well, it's never. But the magic of this island is it's 10 miles from the nearest anything. So no city lights,
Wow.
no city noises. You hear the birds and the fish, thousands of fish all around the island. Island's only the size of a football field.
No seams?
Well,
I saw them. I
very-
felt them.
Very few.
Okay.
Dan was down one
Okay.
time.
Yeah, they-
I'm never
they-
going again.
Dan
They found you.
basically, as far as he's concerned,
So he-
camping is
he was-
slow room service.
He was bait, right?
I don't mind doing this, but so Joe puts us on this little island, and Joe goes to bed early and I don't, and so I'm starting to see the sea rise up and swallow up this little island. All right, so
Well,
if
Dan floated away.
if
a
you
couple
don't
of
have your tent in the right
In
spot,
the middle? In the middle?
it's gone.
Yeah,
The island
little minor thing.
disappears.
Well,
Were
anyway,
there
so-
other people
so I
No.
on the island? Just
No,
you
Me,
guys?
very-
Joe, and Gary.
very
So
seldom
you were
there's
considering
anybody.
climbing trees.
I was considering waking Joe up.
Well, no, here's
Where's the boat?
Wait a minute, this gets more complicated. I now have to measure the tides, because one time we were down there, 3 guys were sitting on the island. We got fish swimming by us because the water came up over a foot on top of the island. Well, there's spring tides, they
Of
call
course, the full moon.
them.
And
Certain times a year you get super hot. Well,
So
anyway.
is it underwater like during king tides? Is
Oh,
it?
yeah,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Well, so now I measure the tides. I got saltwatertides.com. It gives you every tide in the whole thing. So I go down there. Now the reason I go there is Friday night, Saturday night, 2 nights, peace and quiet. Peace and quiet. Sound of silence is magnificent. So I get there and guess what? 10 guys in their 20s are having a bachelor party.
Uh-oh.
Well, so much for peace and quiet.
Yeah, and they probably had a generator.
No,
No. Oh, really?
No. They
Who's that old man?
No, you
smoking
kidding
our
me?
It was
fire?
Kids-
alcohol fueled.
Listen, there's alcohol involved, and they had 400
Yeah.
cases of beer
Yeah.
and 1 piece of meat. Something. They weren't too concerned about. But it was. You just have to switch gears.
I
Either
just don't
leave-
like camping out on a disappearing island, Joe. I'm sorry.
Dan, I'm telling you, he's a Holiday Inner. I don't care what he says. That's just.
Hey, I would rather stay in an old beater motel
That's what I just
with
said.
air conditioning and a hot
And
shower.
wet carpet?
So Joe says, "Oh, I'll bring a big old plastic jug and I'm going to stick it in the tree for you, so you'll have hot
Shower,
water."
yeah.
And you have to dance around trying to find 1 drop of lukewarm water. I'm just not. I ended up going in the ocean. It was better.
Yeah.
And listen, the fact that he didn't. We tried to get him to float away because he was bitching too much, but it didn't work.
That's right.
Find your own island, Dan.
Joe said, "I'll bring everything." He brings this big blow-up mattress. So we're like the 3 Stooges laying on this thing. When one of us moves, the other 2 pop up in the air.
What a memory you have.
Oh, I can't forget it, Joe.
Greg, you ready to go?
Don't bother
Did I
asking.
paint a good picture? Did I paint a good picture?
They've never had an attorney show up on this island yet. Anyway, speaking of Greg Fasula, let me go back and how we all got started. Normally when I meet a new suspect or prospect, I talk about wills or trust. But now, very often, too, I lean more on powers of attorney and healthcare surrogates and living wills, because most people don't think about these things at all when they think the word will. Well, back when I first was 20-some years ago, before I met Greg, I would meet a client of mine, say in South Stewart, and they didn't have it. So I'd go interview a local attorney, and the attorney was real nice to me and said he was fair priced and all that good stuff. And then I'd go with the client to the attorney's office, and all of a sudden, Greg, I know you're going to have a hard time believing this, that attorney turned into a pretentious, arrogant,
Watch for
expletive
language.
deleted. You ever heard of that happening?
No, it's hard to believe.
Hard to believe. And then all of a sudden we'd get a price, and Dan and I, we have choked poor people. They don't know what they're
Yeah.
paying, and they sometimes, Greg, if you and I both have noticed, got a little bit overcharged for what we think is fair. So I make Greg Fasula, and number one, Greg's not driving the Bentley anymore. No, excuse me, ever.
Ever is
Ever. He's not arrogant. He's not pretentious. He's a good listener. And then when he does these things with people, to put it mildly, you're fair. And that's putting it mildly.
I mean, you have to listen to the client. You have to be able to listen to them and converse with them if you really want to do a good job for them.
Well, and I would tell people, and 90% of the people that walk in the door don't have me prepping them ahead of time, saying, hey, make a list. You got to think about what you want to do, because when you're under the gun sitting with an arrogant, pretentious attorney, sometimes you forget to ask the questions that you need to ask.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't drag them out of you,
well, I got to come to Greg's, his defense here.
I'm not only
usually,
defending him. I'm
he will say, the price depends on what I have to do.
Of course.
All right. So if you have a very, very complicated estate with all kinds of stuff, be prepared to pay more. I think what you were sort of alluding to are the average people who don't have that, who still get hammered pretty hard. I think they would find Greg's way of doing business much better.
Well, the key is this: when we talk about a trust as an example, a lot of people think they need a trust, and when Greg's one of the few guys that'll. And some of your competitors that I know, they sell trusts like crazy, and they have these seminars, and no matter what, they're going to give them a trust. Like I had one recently. Mom dies, and she has a trust. So the office tells the beneficiaries, the kids, we need to transfer everything into the trust. So they called me up and said, Joe, we need to transfer everything into the trust. And I said, why? Because they said to. And I said, no. We've got things with beneficiaries that don't need to go into trust.
Right.
We've got
so that happens all the time. I mean, people think they have trust. They need the trust.
Right.
But why do we have the trust? Mainly to avoid probate. Right. Mainly.
That's it.
And there's more than one way to skin a cat as far as
and
that
most
goes.
People don't even know what a probatable asset is.
They don't.
Right.
And
right. That's absolutely
even you
true.
and I don't, Dan.
I get confused.
I mean, but at your age, it's easy.
It's easy.
So when I see clients and they say they think they need a trust, I find out what type of assets that they own and whether they have beneficiaries named, whether they really have a probatable estate. I mean, sometimes it can be great if you have like real estate, if you have
multiple pieces of real estate,
rentals and lots and property out
and if it's
out of
not
state.
done right, every one of us sitting in this room can attest to the fact that if it's not done right, and many times it will cause tremendous grief and heartache for that family.
Yeah, it happens all the time. I see people with trusts where it's either not done right, it's not funded at all. I just saw a guy from up north, Ohio, I think he was from. Yeah, Ohio. Totally not funded.
Had a nice book, real pretty.
Yeah, nice book, but not a
And people
darn
don't
thing.
understand. Funding means we have to transfer the asset into the trust. What's that mean? The name right now says Joe Martek's house. Well, now it says Joe Martek's trust house.
So the trust owns it.
So that the trust owns it. Why do you do that? No probate.
Is that a difficult process? Is that why people don't do it?
Pathetic. Or no, because they weren't explained.
Yeah, I think that's more the reason, because they don't really know. They weren't. The lawyer or whoever did it might have mentioned that you need to do this, but it didn't really hit home.
When you say the word, you need to fund the trust. People don't have a clue what that word fund means. All it means is we need to transfer the ownership, put the name of the trust
So
on
how
it.
do you have the quick claim deed or something? How do you do
for properties?
So you would do that.
Well, and here comes another
for
thing.
Florida
Let
properties, I do it.
Let me tout him even harder. There's some attorneys, they say this is what you need to do, and they don't show people how to do it. Greg just does it. If they own multiple pieces. Now, let's say you've got a piece in Maine and a piece in Ohio and a piece in Michigan. Hey, it's going to cost a little more time and effort to put these three pieces into the trust because they're scattered all over. But the bottom line is, why would you have the trust if you don't?
Right.
Because the concept is simply avoid probate.
Well, you know, Joe, that a lot of times this creates misery and unhappiness. And even going through Christmas without all those problems can cause all kinds of misery and unhappiness.
How many times
a death could happen or a child could die,
yeah.
and now you're going into Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year and you're upset. But I'm segueing into this so magnificently, Joe, because I know that on this coming up on the 16th of December at 6 o'clock, There's going to be a special service at Redeemer Lutheran in Stewart on how to deal with some of that stuff. Because I can't tell you how many people.
Now, what day of the week is that?
It's on a Sunday, the 16th.
16th, this coming Sunday, then.
Yep, 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock. And Redeemer Lutheran's on East Ocean.
Oh, it's on East Ocean. I mean,
and they'll even let Catholics in, right?
This is not a denominational service. It's for people that are having a hard time.
How about
Baptists? Hey, my wife's a Baptist.
Hey, look at.
She's married to me now. I've been a Baptist, Episcopalian, a Lutheran.
I was dipped in the tank in Southern Baptist Church in Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
So I mean, hey, listen, I understand. Well,
I was baptized
warm, too.
when I don't remember.
Thing.
Baby. Yeah.
The key thing what happens, it's a non-denominational service, basically as a counseling or helping people understand what they're going to go through, right?
Well, I mean, there's lots of things that they're going to discuss. Everybody goes through grief a little differently. Mm-hmm. I can tell you this, Christmas was a wonderful time for me as a child, and my kids have taken on that tradition. But what would happen if, you passed away just before Christmas?
My grandmother died on December 23rd.
So there you go.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I was 10 years old.
And
that's a tough one. Mm-hmm. At 10, especially at any age it's tough, especially if it's not expected. But hey.
It makes Christmas mean something different.
No kidding.
Well, Christmas is not what most of American people think it is anyway.
I think it is whatever you make it individually in your home.
Well,
that's fair way.
Yeah.
Christmas is designed to be the birthplace, the birthday of Christ, and then within our own homes, we may do different traditions. That's the way I look at it.
The problem is it's gotten so commercialized anymore.
As many of our holidays.
But everything is commercial.
Unbelievable anymore.
340-1590, 340-1590. I will tout Greg a little more in a minute.
You have 3 calls holding, so.
3 calls.
Hey, Paul, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
If I forget on the other end, Merry Christmas to all the guys and girls on the show.
Thank you so much, Paul.
I've listened to you for quite a while. I enjoy your subjects. Sometimes we get off on different things. I've called you at different times. In my 60s at the time, it's probably 65-ish, 60, high 60s, I promised myself that by 70 I would have everything in order and maybe go to Greg or somebody, whoever, to get everything checked and make sure it's right. And here I am, 75, and still nothing's in order.
Paul,
how to procrastinate.
slap yourself around a little bit. I mean, if you drop dead, you're going to regret it.
Well, I did that. That's why I promised myself I would get everything in order. They brought me back so I could do that and go see the lawyer.
You're not allowed to come back twice, only once.
I know. That's what I worry about. I was
not a bad
first
idea.
time.
What's your phone number? What's your phone number, Greg?
We'll have Greg call you.
337-0062.
You got a pen? Write that down.
337-0062.
Right. Yeah, and I can look at what you've done and see if we need to do anything else.
Greg doesn't charge you a dime to come in and talk to him.
No. Well, that's what I was going to ask.
No.
Would you stop in ahead of time to find out what documents you might need to bring in, or do you go in first for the consultation and then
you come in for a consultation? Just come in, bring what you've done.
Yeah, some things I know are taken care of beneficiary-wise, but still there's other property and single person with a significant other, there's things to consider,
Sure,
absolutely.
Well, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a great Christmas gift to give to your loved ones, brother.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is it better to wait till after the year? Are you swamped now?
When are you gonna die, Paul?
Not till after Christmas. I want to see what I
You got to get for Christmas here, brother.
Then you can wait till after Christmas. But
I'm closed from Christmas through New Year's anyways, so and I'm running a couple weeks behind, so you may
So what
as
you're
well.
saying is call me and let's set up an appointment.
You can call me now and we can
call
set
put
up
it on the
for
calendar,
the new year.
and then don't die until after Greg's done with all that stuff.
Right.
Make that appointment.
Hold off on that.
No, I know it's important, and you're trying to do the right thing and get things set up ahead of time. We've done some things. We've done the burial and all that.
Hey, the first step is to call and make an appointment, period. You know what that does? That's a good motivator to get you off the couch. Call Paul. That works.
And I go by there all the time, too.
Boy, oh boy, what an excuse you've got, right?
I wave as I go by.
You wave as you go by. Hey, Paul,
I'll wave back next
Merry
time.
Christmas to you.
Christmas, Paul.
Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point. I mean, I've gone to nursing homes and I've gone to hospitals,
Right.
but those are people that we're lucky enough to get it done.
340-1590. Dave, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Yeah, I was listening there, and Dan Woron said something about a special service going on Sunday.
Yep.
Over there.
What was that all about?
Well,
because I have some people that are going through some difficult times that might be helpful for.
Well, Dave, that's over at Redeemer Lutheran. It's December 16th at 6.
Okay.
It's called the Hope is Born service, and basically it's trying to help people get through a difficult holiday season. There may be some things that they could use in their life. It's everybody goes through it at different times, and I think it would be great if we had people show up for this.
6 o'clock.
Right.
Redeemer Lutheran's on East Ocean and Stewart.
Right. Is that church next to the Barn Theater? I think?
That's it.
Yep,
That's
it, Dave.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Dave.
thank you very much.
All right,
All
bye-bye.
right. Bye.
340-1590. And Bulldog, you finally called in. He hung up on us.
Okay.
Mr. Impatient. 340. How much time we have left, Mother?
Oh, you've got about 5 more minutes.
Oh, we got lots of time. Bulldog can call back. It's not even long. He's calling on his cell phone. He's probably thinking it's costing him money.
Maybe he got where he was going.
Uh-huh. Maybe he forgot where he's going because he's hanging around a lot of old people now. The other thing, Greg, we talk about this, but I was down to see, I've got clients of mine that are pushing 90, that are living in an assisted living, and they had a AB trust. AB trust means he had his trust, she had her trust. And back when the exclusion was $650,000, you remember that just a few years ago?
I do, yeah.
Well, the AB trust started to make sense. Well, in the meantime, they sell their house, they sell their car, they sell everything. They've got nothing except bank accounts, brokerage accounts, and annuity contracts. Everything has named beneficiaries or transfer on death.
Right.
And I said, guys, you don't need anything anymore. You really don't need anything.
I mean, you should have a will, at least a will, just as a backup, just in case there's something out there that
the key is
you
this.
never know.
So what happens to that trust if they've gotten rid of all of the property that was in the trust?
If it's not funded and there's nothing in
Nothing
it just doesn't apply?
it's
But let me ask you this.
It's like having a wallet that's empty.
If
it
I
has
had
no value.
If I had an AB trust that I paid money for to have done, I'd be reluctant to give it up.
You might want to keep it just because you're sentimental and not too bright.
That's
but
what
I am.
Those were expensive
Bulldog
back in the day.
Bulldog's back.
The AB trust.
Hey, Bulldog is back and he's on the radio.
Yeah, sorry. Cliff would explain this to you as he's a good engineer. He would say, I got double bumped.
Double bumped.
No.
You mean
are on hold.
our producer dumped you?
Wasn't that a dance? The double
Well,
bump?
no. Ask Cliff.
Is that a bit like two-stepping?
Cliff is you just hit the button the wrong way and
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
So what we're doing is
ask Cliff.
No.
Cliff he didn't do it. Cliff's saying if he was in charge, yes, he would have done it.
We went line 1, we went line 3, and we went line 2, and you weren't there.
Hey, my man, Mary,
All right,
when are you coming down and buying scotch again?
Well, I don't know what the Dolphins have. I'll see you on the 17th at about 11:30.
11:30. That's Monday. That's good. That's
yeah,
good.
You'll be awake by
roll
then,
out
Joe.
With you.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I know. 11:30 is not a bad time. You're buying lunch and scotch? There won't be anybody here. Wait a minute. How come I didn't get an answer?
Well, we'll take it from there.
Flip.
So I'm not worried about it.
I've never.
Anyway, no, looking forward to that. And Dan.
Yes, sir.
You said you were talking insurance, and you said, the replacement value, and what you didn't mention is collectible cars that are appreciating even though they're not antiques yet.
Stated value.
Well, that's going to be public record where you can show that this car, based on other sales, has appreciated in value. All right.
Well, yeah, because
there has to be some.
You can find 2 others.
Right. You got to have something to substantiate your claim other than sentimental value. Does that make sense?
What about like an appraisal?
First of all, when you talk to the adjuster, don't be wearing your Harley shirt.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
I'm kidding.
Why not?
I'm kidding.
You should be packing.
Packing, right?
Why not?
But you can also get stated value, Dan. Like if you have an antique car or something.
They can agree to an agreed value on a car depending on what it is. In some cases, if you want to go to that, they're going to charge you more. It's just like you can buy OEM parts for your car, not aftermarket parts, and that's costs a little bit more. So there's some things that can be done, but to get what I consider a collectible car policy, which is rather inexpensive, you have to be a certain age. There's certain criteria you have to meet.
Listen, Bulldog, give Mary Beth my best, give her my sympathy, and I got another caller, and Merry Christmas, but I'll see you before Christmas anyway.
Or he can call you next week.
Or you can call next week because we'll be on the radio still.
Well, yep. I'll be back, but I'll see you before that.
All right, my man.
Joe?
Bye, Joe.
Thanks.
Later.
340-1590. Steve, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Yeah, how are you today?
Very good, thanks.
I apologize if you've already covered this because I came in kind of on the tail end of this, but I'm thinking of a trust, opening a trust to put my residence, my house into. And basically, like you said, I guess mainly to avoid the probate. Is it something, if that's all I'm really going to be putting in, is it something I can do on my own?
You mean like going to Staples and getting the trust form?
You mean you would do your own trust?
Yeah.
Greg, advise him he doesn't have to put his primary residence in a trust.
Yeah, that's a complicated question because in Florida, we have homestead, and homestead technically would not be a probatable property. There does have to be a process for that home to go to your beneficiaries.
Called a will.
And it can be done through a will. It's a homestead petition to the court. The judge looks at the will, sees that this is your homestead, your residence, and say it's going to your kids or whoever. The judge signs an order, and that property basically transfers as homestead. So if that's the only thing you're thinking about as far as the trust, well, depends on what you want to accomplish.
Are we winding down?
Yeah, we're running out of time.
Greg,
you know what? I can put him on hold, get his phone number, or if you want to talk to him off the air.
Okay.
Stay on the line. Okay.
Yep.
Just stay on the line.
340-1590. We're supposed to say goodbye. Almost Merry Christmas, and until next week.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.